tells Lagos government to stop planned burial for EndSARS victims. On the foreign scene, Israeli protesters vow no let-up in anti-reform fight. Details now. Thank you for staying with us. The world news at 6 begins with a mild drama playing out at the Federal High Court in Lagos today between operatives of the Department of State Services, DSS, and officials of the Nigerian Correctional Center as they tussled over who keeps custody of the suspended Central Bank of Nigeria CBN governor Godwin Emefiele. Emefiele was arraigned by the Federal Ministry of Justice today for illegal possession of firearms and ammunition, but was granted bail in the sum of 20 million naira with one shorty following his plea of not guilty. As Emefiele's lawyers were trying to perfect his bail conditions, the DSS operatives and the prison services fought dirty over who would take custody of the embattled CBN bus. 2 Hilux vehicles belonging to the 2 government agencies were positioned near the entrance of the court. The prison service also brought dogs into the court premises. Now, speaking on this, let's take a listen to the VOP editorial team's opinion on this development. Esther, in what can be called a show of shame, the DSS and the prison service today fought over the suspended CBN governor Godwin Emefiele. It was so bad that they were literally tearing at each other's throats. What do we call this? The DSS has had custody of Emefiele all these weeks. He's out on bail. Is it not time for them to let him go? Why are they still fighting over him at this critical moment?
Okay, I don't want to sound derogatory, but let's just look at the personality involved. I think it's the personality involved. Who is the person that is in charge of the custody of this elite supposed individual? I think that's one of that. And it's quite, it's hilarious when you consider how things are done in this country. Do you see the DSS and the prison wards fight over ordinary individuals that they'll be transferring from one particular prison to the other? Do you see them fighting over custody of who gets to guard who or who gets to be in charge? You have Emefiele being asked to be on bail for 20 million naira. Of course, that's an elite individual, and they know the benefits they get or they derive from these individuals that they keep in their custody. You will be so surprised to know that most of these politicians who are in the custody of the DSS or who are in the custody of the prison wardens, what they give these prison wardens, they give them money. So these are the things, these are the catchment that they look after. These are the sensational aspects of the job that they love. So basically, it's not necessarily out of the fact that they're being dutiful or they're carrying on with their duty. As usual, corruption is always the bane of it. And again, the DSS has become a public joke, pardon me to say. And DSS has ought to run a covert operation. Literally, you wouldn't even know that there is a DSS individual or personal agent in any premises that they're supposed to be. But you see them now as acting like rabid dogs. I mean, again, that is basically what it is. Because I find it difficult to believe that they brought in canine dogs to the prison for Emefiele, who actually looks like someone who cannot even hit a fly. Literally, when he was, asked, taken into the custody of the DSS, he seemed to have gone frail, like someone who fell ill. So please explain to me, while you're coming in with guard dogs and all of that, who has cocaine there? Who is the person that is a hefty man? Or who exactly is this individual that you brought in dogs, canine dogs, along with all your ammunition for one individual to show what? Again, it is until we have a government that is principled, a government that is strict to the doctrine of our constitution and understand that it needs to respect the rights of people, we'll continue to have people like the DSS and the SSS act in such a manner like nobody can tell them what to do, because they're beginning to misuse the authority given to them to operate secretly and covertly. The DSS have secret intelligence, a secret intelligence agency that literally now acting like the foot police soldier on the streets. I must tell you that until we get it right, until we begin to think of how to get it right, I think we'll continue to see this kind of drama play out publicly.
Meanwhile, in a follow-up report, the DSS seized Emefiele shortly after its operatives physically fought off operatives of the Nigerian Correctional Services who attempted to take Emefiele away in compliance with the order of Justice Nicholas Owebo. Emefiele was arraigned by the federal government and pleaded not guilty to a 2-count charge of possession of a firearm without license. Justice Owebo had granted Emefiele bail in the sum of 20 million naira, with one shorty in like sum. Now joining me to discuss this and other issues in the world news at 6, we have Mr. Tochukwu Ezukama, a political analyst and social affairs commentator. Good evening, Mr. Tochukwu. Thank you so much for joining me.
Good evening, and you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so dearly. So, Mr. Tochukwu, honestly, I don't want to say I don't know where to start, but this is, what we would call a show of shame. Right now, this is, what happened today at the court premises while Emefiele was arraigned before a federal high court in Lagos. Now, the judge had let him out on a bail of 20 million naira with one shorty in like sum. You would think that the DSS, who has held him in custody since this while, would say, okay, justice is on its way to being served. And right now, since he has been with them all of this while they brought this charge against him, was it not? Can't we say it's really time for them to let him go? Why the fight? Why the dirty fight, actually? Because you could see, this matured men involved in fisticuffs, inner wares showing, and all of that. It was really, really a bad fight. Now, following up to that, the DSS actually rearrested Emefiele again. So we can say they won the fight over the, prison service, and they took Emefiele away. But this time around, we don't know what charges he was arrested on this time around. I mean, what could really be going on with the DSS and Emefiele?
Well, I must be honest with you. I have not paid much attention to the trials and travails of Emefiele because I think it's just the power elite in their power game. It's not just a regular criminal case, arraignment, trial, granting of bail, and all that. Emefiele was once a very powerful man. He had he controlled the central bank, was almost running for the president. We designed the naira. The effect of that redesign of the naira was profound. It threw some people off balance. Some people died because they couldn't access their money. It just threw the society into a very difficult time. So he's not a man that can be kicked around. He's not a man that the DSS can handle anyhow. Somebody, the powers that be, a very powerful man must be behind the problems of Emefiele. I think when he was in power and worked with a clique of the APC, he stepped on some powerful toes. So I think those he offended or those he stepped on their toes are now in a position to teach him some painful lessons.
But now, Mr. Tochukwu, the question will be, why are they not actually bringing these charges of, would you say, economic sabotage against him? Because that was the earlier charge that was brought against him. Then he was downgraded to the charge of, having a firearm in his possession without a license. This is a very downgraded charge. We had the charge of economic sabotage. We had the charge of financial, misappropriation, even charges of terrorism labeled against him. Why are they not holding him to those other, would we say, higher charges? Why this one? If really it is about political vendetta.
The charges are questions of deep. They want to deal with him, and they had held him without any charge until the court said you have to resist him or charge him for something. So now they are charging him for something, and I think charging him for something is to keep holding him so they can get more information. Investigate his information, investigate him even more, and have more charges against him. One charge can be dropped, another one can be added. The thing is that the powers that we want to deal with him, the way the specific approach will depend on circumstances. They will have to adapt their approach one way or the other to the prevailing circumstances. But it's not an issue that should concern the man on the street. People brandish AK-47s routinely. The House of the Fulani headsmen do it, and not only do that, but kill people with their guns. We had Dokubo brandishing his AK-47, and nobody bothered him. So MFLA is being charged for possession of a shotgun, which is not as potent, not as versatile as an AK-47. So it's not about the possession of a gun. It's about some very powerful figures wanting to put him in his place.
Okay, Mr. Tochukwu, this still brings us back to political vendetta. This has political undertones. Now, if truly this is the case, and like I said, the charges were downgraded down to the holding of firearms, and like you said, more than once. In fact, Asari Dokubo has been in the news recently for so many militant related issues. Just yesterday, we had the report. Not just the report, there was a video evidence of him involved in the training of so many young men, and he says he's doing that to protect the president and in the name of the president. Bringing it back to Emefiele, we are talking about political vendetta, we're talking about charges and all of this. What happens to innocent until proven guilty? Because you would expect that the DSS, as a covert service, would have already done their investigations, and if they're arresting him to charge him. They're arresting him to make sure that justice is done. But he's been held all this while. It's been months, and now he's taken to court, and this happens.
Well, he was held without a charge, without any charge. Now he's been charged, and now he's been granted bail. But so the prosecutorial process is still going on. He has not been proven guilty, and nobody has convicted him. So he's being held. I think he was in granted bail. I think he can be released on bail once the bail conditions are met. He was granted bail today, and hopefully in a few days the bail conditions will be met, and then he'll be free on bail, and then we'll get back to court for the prosecution, for the court process to continue. Undoubtedly, it's a political vendetta, yes. Nobody's questioning that. But it's the elite game, the elite versus the elite. They know themselves. They belong to the same associations. They attend the same parties. Their wives belong to the same group, so they know themselves. It's not something that should bother the average Nigerian now. It's an elite power game.
All right, thank you. Thank you so dearly, Mr. Tochukwu. Now, before you go, I'd like to quickly talk about this issue. In the meantime, the acting national chairman of the Labour Party, Lamidi Apapa, has prayed a federal high court in Abuja to compel the Inspector General of Police to eject the embattled Labour Party national chairman, Julius Abure, from the party's national secretariat. Now, in a fresh suit that Apapa filed before Justice Ahmed Mohammed, he is also seeking an order of perpetual injunction restraining Julius Abure and the 3 other suspended national officers from further representing or parading themselves as the national chairman and national officers of the party. Now, Mr. Tochukwu, this is the issue. Apapa is also asking the court to eject Abure, to eject Abure and some other people that have been suspended from the party's national secretariat in Utako in Abuja. He's calling them illegal occupants, right? He's alleging that by the constitution of the Labour Party, Julius Abure, since he's been suspended by the National Executive Council, he cannot continue to hold himself out as the national chairman of the party, as this is a privilege only enjoyed by bona fide members of the party. We do know that there are many people. In fact, what we have now is the Abure faction and the Apapa faction. All right. That is what is going on in the Labour Party right now. We do know that many people, in fact, many members of the Labour Party in many different states stand with Abure. Does Apapa really have a case here against Abure?
Well, I've not studied his case. And it's left for the judge to decide. I think Apapa, based on my very, very subjective opinion, just I'm a lawyer based on my layman's gumption, I think Apapa has no case. And that's why most members of the Labour Party is standing with Mr. Abure. But the case is in court, as you rightly stated. It's for the court to decide. Most people see Apapa as an agent of some disruptive forces, an agent of some forces of greed and insensitivity. But that's our perception. It's left for the court of competent jurisdiction to rule on the case. So until they do, we just sit and see how it turns out.
In May of this year, that was like less than 2 months ago, a high court sitting in Edo State had actually affirmed Julius Abure as the confirmed national chairman of the Labour Party while restraining Apapa's faction. All right, this was Justice Emmanuel Aihamoje. It dismissed the notice of suspension that was issued against Abure by some Labour Party members, including Apapa, at the ward level before he threw out the case for lack of merit. One would expect that maybe Apapa would go to an appellate court to appeal this decision, but he returned to another federal high court to plead his case. Now, you've said he does not have a case. What really will happen at the end of all this? Apapa, it is really Apapa versus Abure at this time. What are we expecting to come out of this? Will the Labour Party be left without a chairman, or will they be left, with these two factions?
I hope they are not left with two factions, but have decided already. It's appeal level. Apapa has the constitutional right to appeal. But you're saying he did not appeal, he went to another court. The thing is that in the judiciary there are rules, but lately politicians...
Are you with me, Mr. Tuchku, sir? Are you with me, sir? All right, I think we lost Mr. Izukama right there. We will try to reach him one more time. Unfortunately, we were unable to reach Mr. Ezukama right there. In continuation of the news, in another development, Amnesty International has asked the Lagos state government to stop the planned mass burial of 103 SARS victims. This follows the state government's response to a leaked memo addressed to the State Ministry of Health by its procurement agency. The Lagos state government, however, confirmed the leaked memo but said the victims to be buried and not from the controversial Lekki tollgate shooting. Reacting, Amnesty's Director of Information, Issa Sanusi, in a statement yesterday, demanded an independent investigation into the matter, adding that an autopsy should be done on the victims' corpses. He also asked that the identities of those to be buried are revealed. Sanusi further said that all those detained because of their role in the End SARS protests must be released immediately, while authorities must ensure that victims and their families are provided with access to justice and effective remedies, including adequate compensation. Meanwhile, the recently ousted national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Senator Abdullahi Adamu, and its former national secretary, Iyola Omisore, have met with President Bola Tinubu at the presidential villa in Abuja today. Both men reportedly came together for the meeting, which took place behind closed doors in the president's office. Both former leaders of the ruling party resigned about a week ago following a meeting of its National Working Committee. However, they had remained silent over the incident, with the former national chairman, Adamu, signaling that he would confer with the president before making any statement on his purported resignation. You are currently listening to the World News at 6 on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. After the break, we'll bring you stories on the foreign scene. Just stay with us. Welcome back. You're still listening to the World News at 6 and Voice of the People 90.3 FM. Now, on the foreign scene, Jerusalem is calm after the sound and fury of Monday's mass protests around Israel's parliament called the Knesset. After months of a simmering political crisis, several groups involved in this year's mass protests against the government's proposed judicial reforms admit to have lost the battle yesterday. For months, the protest movement thwarted Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's efforts to limit the Supreme Court's authority. Supreme Court justices will no longer be able to argue that the government's actions are unreasonable. The Prime Minister's opponents fear that this is just the start and other actions to erode the court's influence will inevitably follow this decision. This could include giving the Parliament the power to override the Supreme Court's rulings and changes to the way judges are selected. And that's it on the world news at 6. Just before we wrap up, let's take a look at the top stories again. You heard that there was a drama in court today as the DSS and the prison services fought over Emefiele's custody. You also heard that the DSS rearrested Emefiele in court as the correctional center withdraws. You heard that Lamidi Apapa has asked the court to compel the IG of police to evict Abure from the Labour Party National Secretariat. And Amnesty International has told the Lagos State government to stop the planned burial for End SARS victims. On the foreign scene, Israeli protesters have vowed they will not let up in the fight against reforms. And that's it on the world news at 6. My name is Ijeoma Innocent. Please follow our social media handles at VOP903FM for coverage of your live events and brand news mentioned on our news bulletins. Do send email to news@voiceofthepeople.ng. Good evening and thank you for listening.
Who is this? Oh yeah, this is VOP 90.3.
Voice of the People 90.3 FM.
Who plays? Oh yeah, this is VOP, baby. Voice of the People 90.3 FM. This is VOP 90.3. To the city's #1 super dial. Voice of the People 90.3 FM. Lagos.